this one goes out to these free man people that are working on this justice system. Um, First of all, I came to you nice, loving, and peaceful, asking questions that you don't want to answer, but you want to keep pushing what I believe everything is wrong. And then if I try and point out where you are wrong, and because you can't answer the questions I'm asking, um, I have to call a spade a spade. You don't like that, so you start throwing names at me. And one example is I am going to call you an O.J. Simpson wannabe. I will call you a criminal because that's all you want to do is you want to create, you know, an ability for everybody to be criminals and get away with it. And when I pointed out how that's possible, then all of a sudden you think that I'm, this hateful person. I hate men, for example, or I throw, calling you a criminal is like the biggest insult you've ever heard. And it's like, well, if you are a criminal, suck it up. You're a criminal. You want to give everybody and teach everybody how to be a criminal. And part of the way I looked at the justice system when I was trying to look at truth within the justice system, that we all agree it's not a perfect system, but it's the best we've got. So you haven't even found out where it's not the best system. But when you get outside of the box, then you can see where it's not the best system. But you want to make the a system that's not the best to be able to work for you. And if it works for you, it will work for a killer, just like it worked for O.J. Simpson. Now, I've called you all lawyer wannabes, and it's like if you're going to study the law for 10 years, guess what? You're a lawyer. Just because you haven't passed a bar doesn't mean you're not a lawyer. You have all of the information that a lawyer has. And instead of doing the research by yourself, you could have gone to school. The only thing you did is you gained the education without spending money for student loans. Good for you for doing some education, but it makes you a lawyer. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, must be a duck. So, y'all are nothing but lawyers, and all lawyers are nothing more than criminals who want to take advantage of other people. And, when you want to get outside of the box, you got to see how something works for you, but then put it on the other side and see how it would work for your enemy as well. you know. Okay, and in my situation, I was dealing with child support issues. Okay, I cannot financially support my children on my own, especially when I have an abusive ex that makes it next to impossible for me to work. So I went to school. I took programming. There is no way in hell you can function in that career while you're dealing with 24/7 worth of abuse. So I had to work in a factory which destroyed my physical health and did not provide the level of income that was provided food for my children to eat. So while I bring up that point, you want to call me I hate men. And it's like, no. I love children. And I think children have rights. And, when I had the conversation with this guy that wants to throw names and hateful names at me, the only thing you told me is how much you hate children and the rights of children, which typically that's a lawyer that is heartless, a lawyer that has no interest in the best interest and full human rights of all human beings. You just want to be right for yourself. So, when I was looking at, okay, how do we fix this justice system? How do I make it work for me? When I sit back, I see, well, would it work for my ex-husband? Even though he's a freaking asshole, he should still have the right to his human rights. And I would never want a system where I can take advantage of him. Where I can bleed that guy dry. you know, there's something wrong there, that if I gain all of the knowledge of how to manipulate the system, then would I not be taking advantage of somebody else? I don't want more than what is needed. Okay, I only needed somebody to pay their equal share in the responsibility to the children they brought into the world. I don't need to be wealthy and bleed somebody dry. So when I want to fix a justice system, and it works for me, I turn it around and see how it would work for my enemy. And clearly, you'll never ever find that with the way you guys are designing that structure. Because ultimately, at the end, the kids would suffer from it. Because there's no way in hell I can go into that justice system and make somebody else be held accountable. Because if somebody else had the same knowledge as you, they know that they have rights not even to show up. All they have to do is say, hey, I'm not that person. you know, it makes no logic sense. There is zero way of making anybody responsible and accountable for their actions according to this FREEMAN way of perceiving our legal system. So, while it was thrown at me that children starving, children dealing with a great deal of abuse, and trying to use a legal system to stop the clear crimes that were being taken place, this guy told me it was frivolous. So if it's frivolous to protect children, then, you look at why this guy's so motivated to fix the law. Well, his father's in jail for, I guess, a crime he didn't commit, or thinks he didn't commit some kind of crime, but they're saying that he's in jail because he didn't know his rights. And it's like, okay, if you think it's frivolous for a child to have human rights to food and shelter, then I have the right to say your father being in jail is frivolous. And that really hurt you. Kind of feel the pain that you might be going through, because that really was, probably a stabbing thing when your father's in jail for something he didn't do, all because he didn't know the justice system. Well, guess what? That was equally painful to hear, that you didn't give a shit about children. So, and they're all kind of saying that I didn't do my homework, and it's like, I've done my homework more than you. Clearly, if I know where you're going wrong. And you keep saying, get out of the box, and it's like, you're right in the box. How can you think outside of the box when you are so caught up in the box? And that's a tricky thing to know when you're outside of that box. Okay, because in that way of explaining that one, it's like patterns of abuse. We all know that abusive patterns are repeated within our genetics. Both my grandparents' side all had abuse. My mother married an abusive man, and I said, there's no way in hell that's going to happen to me. I am so breaking that cycle. And all of the advice that was out there followed. I read every self-help book to ensure I don't repeat that same pattern. Guess what? I repeated the same pattern. So that's why I needed to understand, how do you get out of that box? Because I did my damnedest to get out of that box, only to find out I was still in that box. So it is a really, really wild, wild, wild new information to be able to get yourself out of that box. And one, the biggest, hardest pill to swallow is there are no victims. You create your own hell. Your father in jail, he created that for himself. He did something to get himself in jail. Me not collecting child support, yeah, I created that myself. Hard pill to swallow. As a matter of fact, now that I know most women that are suffering from abuse are creating their own abuse. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the only way you're going to get out of that abusive repeating pattern. And even when I volunteered to work at a women's shelter, as long as I tell women the truth, I was told that they would lose their funding. So we have a social structure that says we are never have to be responsible and accountable how we create our own hell. And as long as we're locked into that little box, there's no way any problems are going to get solved. This is the new way of moving forward, is taking responsibility for what it is you attract in your life. Don't be if at any time you're going to start pointing fingers at other people, that finger needs to be pointed at yourself. So that's the only way that I keep myself sane, is make a ton of complaints. Make as many complaints and excuses as you got. That's something that we've been avoiding all the time. We've been looking at thinking positive all the time and ignore all of the negative shit. And it's like, no, it's time to face that evil. And all of those complaints, all of those excuses you got, don't point a finger at anybody else. Point the finger at yourself. You kind of look at all of these elites controlling us. Guess what? We gave them permission to do everything they're doing. And even though we know it, we're still giving them permission to do everything they're doing. For me, it's like I get perfect justice now. I don't walk into that building. And personally, anybody that walks into any justice type building, you're holding that system up. You're saying that system has value. You're saying we need to give that weight. Whatever the opinions come out of that court system, it's going to be right, when it clearly can be wrong, because it can't tell the difference between right and wrong. That's the problem with the justice system. No matter how much you can manipulate that structure, there's no way that structure can tell the difference between right and wrong. It's incapable of doing it. And there's lots and lots of science that proves that. So those that are working on that FREEMAN, justice system, know without a doubt, the only thing that you're doing is teaching everybody on the planet how to be an O.J. Simpson, how to be a criminal and get away with it. Sorry, I ain't going to support something like that. Sorry if that's a little offensive to you, but maybe you might want to face that little pill. But that is not my business. If you guys want to follow through on that, you guys want to create another stronger corrupt justice system, at least we know who's starting it. But I'm not playing in your game. Anyways, there's my vent. And I would love, love, love to talk with anybody that is working within this new justice system, because there is a way. But you got to be receptive to it. And until people are receptive to a shift, no shift is ever going to happen. So, and it's not my responsibility to, shift your mind. You got to shift your own mind. It's not my responsibility. The only responsibility I got is making sure my mind is shifted and live in peace, and know without a doubt you need to touch that hot stove to know that it's hot. Somebody telling you that, hey, if you touch that hot stove, you're going to get burnt, you won't listen to it. So you need to go and make as many mistakes as you can, because you'll learn from your mistakes. So I'm supportive of your mistakes. I just choose not to play your game. Wish I found other like-minded people that would want to, form a new justice system so innocent people aren't in jail. But clearly, if you want, innocent people in jail, go for it. If you want criminals walking your streets and killing your kids and doing as much harm to society, keep up with what you're doing. It just makes the system crash that much harder. I wonder, ever since you guys started, how many criminals are actually getting away with it. And you'll never know it, because the justice system said you were innocent, and we all believe what a judge says. Meanwhile, they're killers, and you let them out in your community, and nobody got healed. So if you ever want to wonder why your communities are falling apart, it's because you're supporting a justice system that you know damn well can't tell the difference between right and wrong. It's letting criminals be out on the street. That's the whole justice system is specifically designed for criminals to be criminals. There's no justice system for the innocent. Even if you got rights, you're still going to get, at the end of the day, if a criminal's allowed to be on the street and he's got a gun and he's going to shoot you, you're dead. How much did your rights protect you then? Peace out.